It was a quiet Sunday morning in Selma, Alabama. The air was thick with the scent of magnolia trees, but something even stronger lingered, the feeling that history was about to be made. In a small, worn-down house on the edge of town, 17-year-old Josiah Walker sat on the wooden steps, tying his shoes. He wasn't just getting ready for another day. He was preparing to step into something much bigger than himself. Alongside his father, Elijah, Josiah would soon walk toward the Edmund Pettus Bridge, joining hundreds of others in a march for freedom. They had no idea what awaited them on the other side: violence, resistance, and a test of courage that would change their lives forever. This is the story of a boy who found himself at the heart of one of the most pivotal moments in the civil rights movement. Stay with me as we uncover the journey that turned ordinary people into heroes and a quiet morning into a turning point in history. In 1965, Selma, Alabama, was a city divided. Segregation ruled every part of life, from schools to restaurants, and for Black citizens, even the simple act of voting was nearly impossible. Despite being guaranteed the right to vote, African Americans faced unfair literacy tests, poll taxes, and intimidation at the hands of those who wanted to keep them powerless. Tension filled the air, and though the streets of Selma looked peaceful on the surface, beneath them was a brewing storm, a fight for justice that could no longer be ignored. Amid this struggle lived the Walker family. Elijah Walker, a hardworking janitor at the Selma courthouse, was a man of few words but deep convictions. He had spent his life watching injustice unfold around him, but he refused to let it define his family's future. His wife, Evelyn, held their home together with quiet resilience, ensuring their children still found moments of joy despite the world outside. Their daughter, Lila, was young, too young to fully understand the weight of the fight, but old enough to sense the fear in her mother's eyes whenever talk of protests filled the house. And then there was Josiah, 17 years old, standing at the crossroads between boyhood and manhood, trying to understand what his place in this battle would be. Elijah believed in something greater than himself: freedom, not just for his family, but for everyone. Though he swept the courthouse floors at night, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who knew his worth. To him, freedom wasn't just a dream. It was a promise that had been made and broken too many times. And on that fateful Sunday morning, as he put on his best suit and turned to his son, he knew it was time to fight for it once more. The morning of the march was unlike any other. Inside the Walker home, the air was thick with both purpose and fear. Evelyn adjusted Elijah's tie with steady hands, though he could feel the slight tremble in her touch. Lila sat at the kitchen table, her small fingers tracing patterns on the wood, sensing the weight of the moment, even if she couldn't fully understand it. Josiah laced up his shoes, his heart pounding as he glanced at his father. "Are you ready?" Elijah asked. Josiah swallowed hard, then nodded. The Selma to Montgomery march wasn't just another protest. It was a fight for dignity, for the right to vote, for the future of an entire generation. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had called upon people from all walks of life to stand together, to show the world that the fight for civil rights could not be ignored. But Selma was dangerous territory. The first attempt at this march had ended in bloodshed, and everyone knew that the bridge ahead of them was more than just a crossing. It was a battleground. As Josiah and Elijah stepped outside, the streets of Selma were alive with movement. Men, women, and children gathered, their hands clasped, their voices quiet but filled with determination. Some carried signs, others held nothing but hope in their eyes. They walked together, feet moving in unison toward the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the sun casting long shadows ahead of them. The closer they got, the louder their voices became, rising in song, "We shall overcome, we shall overcome." But as the bridge came into view, So did the line of state troopers standing on the other side, their faces unreadable, their batons firm in their grip. Josiah's breath caught in his throat. Something was about to happen, and there was no turning back now. As the marchers reached the crest of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the sight before them sent a chill through the crowd. A wall of state troopers stood in rigid formation, helmets gleaming in the sun, batons gripped tightly in their hands. Behind them, tear gas canisters rested at their feet, waiting to be unleashed. The air was thick with tension, a silence so heavy that even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Josiah's fingers tightened around his father's hand. He could feel Elijah's grip, firm, steady, unwavering. Then a commanding voice rang out from the police line. "Turn around and go home." No one moved. Instead, voices rose in unity, strong and unshaken. "We shall overcome. We shall overcome." But before another word could be sung, the order was given. The troopers lunged forward, batons swinging, boots pounding against the pavement. The first screams ripped through the air as marchers were struck down where they stood. Tear gas exploded, burning eyes and choking throats. People scattered in all directions, running, stumbling, falling. Josiah barely had time to react before a shadow loomed over him. A trooper, baton raised high, ready to strike. Fear paralyzed him. Then, in a blur, Elijah stepped in front of him. The crack of wood against flesh rang out as Elijah collapsed to the ground. "Papa!" Josiah cried, dropping to his knees, his hands shaking as he reached for his father. Elijah groaned, pain etched across his face, but there was no time to stop. Around them, chaos raged. Josiah's heart pounded, his body frozen between terror and the instinct to fight back. But his father's weak voice cut through the panic. "Go, Josiah. Get up." With every ounce of strength, Josiah pulled his father's arm over his shoulder, helping him to his feet. They stumbled together, retreating from the nightmare unfolding behind them. The bridge, once a path to justice, had become a battlefield. And Josiah knew nothing would ever be the same again. Back home, the air was thick with silence. The only sound was the soft, steady breathing of Elijah as he sat in his chair, his face bruised, his body aching from the blows he had taken. Evelyn sat beside him, pressing a damp cloth to his swollen cheek, her hands gentle but tense. Lila sat in the corner, her wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. She had seen the way her mother's hands trembled when they arrived home, the way Josiah's face was pale with shock. This wasn't just about the march. Something deeper had broken inside them. Josiah paced near the window, fists clenched, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't put into words. Finally, he turned to his father, his voice sharp with anger and pain. "Why do they hate us so much?" His question hung in the air, raw and desperate. Elijah took a slow breath, wincing as he shifted in his chair. "Because we want what they've had for centuries," he said quietly. "And they're afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of change." Before Josiah could respond, a firm knock echoed through the house. Evelyn hesitated before opening the door to reveal Reverend Collins, his face solemn yet determined. "I came to check on you," he said, stepping inside. His eyes landed on Elijah, filled with quiet respect. "Dr. King is planning another march," he continued, his voice steady. "This time, we'll be ready. We'll have protection. The world is watching now." Evelyn's eyes filled with worry. "Is it safe?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Reverend Collins sighed. "It's never safe," he admitted. "But change doesn't come without sacrifice." Josiah looked at his father, then at the bruises covering his body. Fear still lingered in his chest, but beneath it, something else burned. Determination. He squared his shoulders, meeting the Reverend's gaze. "I'll go," he said firmly. "I want to be part of it." Elijah's tired eyes studied his son for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. "Then we march," he said. 3 days later, Selma was alive with a new energy, one fueled by determination, not fear. The streets swelled with people, far more than before. Men and women from across the country had arrived. Ministers, students, even white supporters, standing shoulder to shoulder with the people of Selma. Cameras lined the sidewalks, reporters scribbling notes, their presence a silent shield against the brutality that had stained the bridge days before. This time, the world was watching. Josiah stood among the marchers, his heart pounding, but not from fear. He had made his choice. This wasn't just his father's fight, it was his. He moved toward the front, standing beside Reverend Collins, his young face set with resolve. Elijah, still sore from his wounds, stood in the crowd with Evelyn and Lila, watching as his son took his place among the leaders. Josiah could feel his father's eyes on him, and though no words were spoken, he understood. This was bigger than them, bigger than Selma. As they stepped forward, a familiar chant rose into the air, stronger than before. "We shall overcome, we shall overcome." The sound of hundreds of voices singing as one sent chills down Josiah's spine. Step by step, they moved toward the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the same bridge where blood had been spilled, the same bridge where fear had once forced them to turn back. But not this time. At the top of the bridge, the line of troopers stood waiting again, their helmets gleaming under the midday sun. The tension crackled in the air like a storm about to break. Josiah swallowed hard but kept walking. He didn't know what would happen next, but this time, he wouldn't run. This time, they would not be turned away. As the marchers reached the top of the bridge, the police stood in formation just as they had before. The same hard stares, the same batons, the same threat of violence lingering in the air. Josiah's breath caught in his throat, but he didn't stop walking. No one did. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the officers, a tall man with graying hair and a deep scar across his forehead, stepped forward. His name was Captain Turner, and for a long moment, he simply looked at the marchers. His gaze swept over the crowd, the men, the women, the children, before settling on Josiah, standing firm at the front. Then, in a voice loud enough for all to hear, he spoke. "I fought in the war," he said, removing his helmet. "I fought for freedom, and I'll be damned if I stand here and stop these people from getting what's rightfully theirs." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The other officers glanced at each other, shifting uneasily. Turner turned to his men, his voice steady but firm. "Stand down." For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, the officers lowered their batons. The tension that had gripped the bridge for days seemed to shatter in an instant. Josiah could hardly believe what he was seeing. As the officers stepped aside, the path to Montgomery lay open before them. A lump formed in his throat as he looked back at his father, who stood at a distance, his face filled with pride. And then, step by step, the marchers moved forward, crossing the bridge, not in fear, but in victory. The chants of "We shall overcome" rose once more, stronger than ever. For the first time, Josiah knew, they hadn't just marched, they had made history. The Selma marches were more than just protests. They were a turning point in history. The courage of those who walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, facing violence and fear, ignited a movement that could not be stopped. Their struggle led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, ensuring that no American could be denied the right to vote because of the color of their skin. As Josiah reached the other side of the bridge, he looked back at the path they had taken, at the place where fear had once held them back. But not anymore. He took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling in his chest. "We didn't just march," he whispered to himself. "We changed history." Their footsteps echoed far beyond Selma, reminding future generations that justice is never freely given. It must be fought for. And though the battle for equality continues, their story stands as a testament to the power of courage, unity, and hope. The march isn't over. It never is. So let us remember their fight, honor their sacrifice, and no matter the obstacles ahead, never stop marching forward. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share it with others. What does this moment in history mean to you? Let us know in the comments below. These stories remind us of the strength and sacrifice of those who came before us, and their fight for justice still echoes today. If you want to hear more powerful stories from history, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Thank you for watching, and remember, history lives on in the lessons we carry forward.